Okay, so let's get right into it. We're going to talk about something that feels, well, just plain wrong. It's one of the biggest, most unsettling ideas in our modern justice system, this whole concept of being too big to jail. So, let me set the scene for you. You've got a massive global bank, HSBC, and they get caught. Not for some minor accounting error, but for laundering billions of dollars for some of the most violent international drug cartels on the planet. I mean, this is money that's directly fueling unimaginable chaos and violence. The evidence? It was absolutely overwhelming. The crime itself was just undeniable. So what happens next? What's the punishment for a crime of this scale? You'd expect arrests, trials, prison sentences, right? Nope. The punishment was a fine. Now, don't get me wrong, it was a huge fine, but that's all it was. Just money. Nobody got handcuffed. No executives did a perp walk for the evening news.
And that right there is the big question we're tackling in this explainer. You and I know that for even a tiny, tiny fraction of a crime like this, an ordinary person would be looking at serious prison time. So how on earth does a corporation facilitate a crime this massive and nobody, not a single person, goes to jail?
Well, the answer starts to unfold when you look at this really strange legal idea, the idea that you can somehow have a crime without any actual criminals to punish. And look, this HSBC situation, it wasn't some bizarre one-off event. It's actually a perfect textbook example of how our legal system is set up. The system is designed to go after the company itself, the corporate entity, but it kind of creates this protective bubble around the actual human beings who made the calls. The institution gets punished, but the people who run it, they often just get to walk away. So how is this even possible? How can the law work this way? It really all boils down to this tricky and honestly kind of weird legal concept called corporate personhood. Yeah, you heard that right. For over 100 years, the law, in many ways, has treated corporations like they are persons. This means they get some of the same rights and responsibilities as you and me. But the really important part of that definition is that little phrase at the end, some, but not all. That's where things get interesting.
So what rights do we share with a corporation? Well, a company can own property, right? It can buy buildings, land, whatever. It can sign a contract that's legally binding, and it can take someone to court, or get sued itself. So in a lot of ways, legally speaking, it really does act like a person. But, and this is the huge but, here's where the two paths split. If you or I commit a serious crime, we face fines, sure, but we also face the loss of our freedom. We can go to prison. A corporation, on the other hand, it can only be punished with money. Because, think about it. You can't exactly throw the company's headquarters in a jail cell, can you? And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? It perfectly sums up the whole paradox. These giant corporations get to enjoy a whole bunch of the legal perks and protections of being a person, but they're completely immune to the single most serious punishment our justice system has. So if you're a massive company and you know the absolute worst thing that can happen to you is a fine, how do you start thinking about breaking the law? Well, it stops being a moral question. It just becomes math.
As soon as you take prison off the table for the people making the decisions, the entire calculation changes. $1 billion fine stops being this terrifying deterrent and starts to look, well, like just another line item in the annual budget. It becomes an unfortunate, maybe even annoying, but totally manageable cost of doing business. And let's put that number into perspective, because it really matters. HSBC's fine was about $1.9 billion. That sounds like a staggering amount of money to us, right? But for a global bank that big, that fine was basically the equivalent of about 2 months of its income. For you or me, that's like getting a speeding ticket. Yeah, it's annoying. It stings a little. But is it really going to make you fundamentally change how you live your life? Probably not.
And all of this leads us to the final and, frankly, the most dangerous part of this whole system. It doesn't just let people off the hook, it actually creates a powerful incentive to do the wrong thing.
There's actually an economic term for this exact situation. It's called moral hazard. It's what happens when you completely disconnect an action from its consequences. If you know you're protected from the worst-case scenario, you're just way more likely to take huge, reckless risks. Because, hey, if it pays off, you win big. And if it all goes wrong, well, somebody else is going to have to clean up the mess. The damage this does to the system is just huge. It basically encourages reckless behavior. It creates this illusion of accountability. We all see the headline about the $1 billion fine and think justice was served, but the bad behavior never really stops. Over time, it normalizes this kind of massive corporate crime. And guess who usually ends up paying the final price when one of these risks blows up and crashes the market? Yep, we do, the public.
So when you boil it all down, what you're left with is a justice system that is fundamentally unequal. It's two-tiered. There's one set of rules for regular people like us, where our actions have real, serious, personal consequences. And then there's another set of rules for the biggest corporate players, where accountability isn't about justice, it's just about a price tag.
And that really leaves us with a final, pretty chilling question to think about. If the people at the absolute top of the economic ladder know that, when push comes to shove, they're basically operating with the safety net. If they know that, they are, for all practical purposes, too big to jail. What's really stopping them from causing the next huge scandal or the next devastating financial crisis?